So this Valentine's Day is an important anniversary for me. 10 years ago this year, I experimented with going out by myself on Valentine's Day. It was really a social experiment at the time. Today, it's not so much of an experiment. Plenty of people do it now. You got to remember the environment we were in back in 2011. You couldn't go out as a gay couple very easily back then, and solo sexuality was way out, well into the future. Okay, and I got pretty bad service. I sit down, and within 5 minutes, the waiter had brought me the bill and was trying to rush me out the door. He told me it was okay to take my time, but asked me to pay right there and then. And at the time, I really couldn't comprehend why he was treating me that way. I I was so upset that I tipped him 5 cents, and he had the audacity to ask me to fill out this feedback form. And I wrote that the food was very good, but this waiter needs to learn that people have very different views on relationships. And when the server looked at it, he shoved it into his pocket and was really embarrassed. And I tipped him 5 cents on a $15-$20 meal. And the more I thought about it, I realized that the waiter was probably trying to get me out the door because it was taking up his real estate, right? This is a very busy time of the year for the restaurant, and he'd rather have a couple sit down because he thought they would tip better. Now that's the problem. He thought they would tip better. That's what I wanted to point out. I actually tip very well when I get good service. My favorite example was one time I went to a restaurant and I mentioned my dietary restrictions. And I'm not actually that sensitive, but the waiter, he went behind the counter and took pictures of the layout of the kitchen to make sure that nothing would be cross-contaminated. Usually I'm not that sensitive, but he went above and beyond. And so he really earned the tips of people who have dietary restrictions. That's the way I like to put it. Some people don't earn the tips of people who have dietary restrictions, and so we don't tip them very well, right? That's the way I like to put it. In my opinion, if you don't want to accept dietary restrictions, choose a different line of work. But that's my opinion. That's a big problem because he thought I wouldn't tip very well. He rushes me out the door, and sure enough, I don't tip, right? I think part of the reason why we have a lot of discrimination in the United States is our tipping culture. I think that's a big source of reinforcement for discrimination, right? You see somebody you don't think is going to tip very well, might not be a very well-founded belief, but it propagates, right? They don't tip very well, and then sure enough, the next generation of waiters are going to assume they're not going to tip very well. The unfortunate thing is that it's hard to break the tipping culture, right? If you're the only restaurant that has a no tipping policy, you're going to be at a competitive disadvantage, right? It kind of has to happen at the same time, right? Unless we passed a law that completely outlawed tipping, right? Which has its own can of worms, right? I can't see any way out of this, right? Anyways, just my thoughts on it. I tip, but I hate the culture of tipping. Let's put it that way. And it always causes a lot of conflict. Fortunately, I haven't had that bad experience here in Montana. I think here in Montana, I got to check the law, but some states have different wages for people who earn tips. Perhaps that's not so true here in Montana. I would imagine Washington is probably more likely to not have that kind of policy, but I got to double check. Certainly here in Montana, the cost of living is a lot lower, so maybe people aren't so dependent on tipping. Who knows? Or it could just be more acceptance. I hope it's more acceptance, but hopefully we'll eventually find a way around the tipping culture. Thanks for watching.